Hi, Anna. It's so wonderful to be chatting with you today. I would like to start with a brief introduction to you for the audience. I was just so excited. I was like, here's somebody I would love to have a long conversation with. This is my chance. So, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Let me introduce you to the speaker today. Meet Anna Nguyen. She is a proud transgender woman and currently works as an advisory engineer at IBM. She joined IBM to the 2018 cohort of IBM's Tech Reentry program. Prior to that, Anna took a 3-year career break to explore a personal lifelong passion, fashion. And she worked as a pattern maker for an up-and-coming fashion designer, also modeled in fashion weeks in New York, London, Los Angeles, and Kochi, India. So today, we're going to be chatting with Anna about her amazing journey of self-discovery. She's going to be sharing tips for anyone who's looking to pivot and she's going to be sharing tips for anyone looking to pivot their career. This talk is presented in partnership with iRelaunch, your return to work experts. So to kick us off, Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, I'd be happy to. It's first I want to say it's a great honor and privilege to be able to share my life and experience with everybody. My name is Anna Nguyen. I pronounce she, L, A. I'm as David mentioned, I am a Vietnamese American transgender woman. So let me quickly go over my life because it's lengthy. You will find out why soon. I was born in London, but I grew up in Saigon, in Vietnam. And when South Vietnam fell to the communists in 1975, I left Vietnam and went to England, spent a couple of years there, rejoined my family in New York City in 1977 as a refugee. There was a bit of a complication there because I left Vietnam as a British citizen on account of my having been born in London. But then my family went to the US. So in order for me to rejoin them, there was a bit of a glitch because, well, I can't come into the US as a refugee since I'm a British citizen. So it took a bit of doing, but I eventually ended up in New York City, graduated from NYU in 1981 with a bachelor in computer science and mathematics. And to save you doing the math, that makes me 61 years old. So after a stretch in New York City, I moved down to Austin, Texas in 1992 to begin working at a startup company, which eventually got acquired by IBM. So I stayed at IBM until 2000. Then I left and went through a succession of startups, software startups here in Austin. Including founding a software company and spending time at a couple of startups. So around the early 2000s, I began to seriously think about who I really am, about what would make me happy. And around the early 2010s, I started going into therapy, trying to explore my gender identity, see how, where my head was, what I wanted to do. And I decided that transitioning was the right decision for me. The question for me at the time was that I asked myself was how would I rather spend the rest of my life? And the answer to that question at that point was immediate and clear and emphatic, and that this is how I want to spend the rest of my life. And so in 2013, I came out to my wife, then came out at work in 2014. And never looked back. Have never been happier. Now,
Thank you. Yeah.
as you mentioned, my one of my hobbies is sewing and pattern making and fashion design. So in 2017, I had, or maybe a little bit earlier than that, I had an opportunity to come work for a up and coming fashion designer. And so, of course, I jumped at that because it was a pretty rare opportunity. And I really had a great time. I learned a lot. I saw the inside of an industry that I've only seen from the outside and always been interested in. And that it was great. And somewhere along the way, I, I got the opportunity to be a runway model. So I modeled in shows in London and New York and LA and all that jazz. And that, again, that was also a super exciting and super rare opportunity for somebody like me. So after a while doing that, as you can imagine, with any artistic endeavor, any artistic occupations, photography or sculpting or painting or music or acting, the work may be very enjoyable and may be what one really loves, but generally it doesn't pay the bill. Generally, a very small percentage of people in the industry makes a great living at it, and the rest of us have to have a day job. So after a few years in the fashion industry, that kind of became apparent, and I was fortunate in that I was in a place where I could continue working in the fashion industry and not be too much worse off. But somewhere along the way, I got wind of the of IBM's Tech Reentry program, which is a program that for people who have been away from the industry for a few years. So I applied to that. I interviewed, was offered a job, and I rejoined IBM in 2018. There were, let's see, I think about 30 something other women in my cohort. And their absence from the industry range anywhere from a few years, like myself, to 20, 30 years for women who had left to raise a family. And it's a great program because really software engineering is a skill, and it never leaves one. It would never leave you. So the program is great because everybody wins. IBM gets gets candidates who are experienced and mature, and the returners don't have to answer the difficult question of, well, what have you done for the past X number of years? I came back into IBM, and that was where I came to find out that IBM is now such an amazingly progressive and inclusive company as far as minorities, not minorities in all aspects, ethnic, racial, gender identity, sexual orientation, different abilities. And it's really amazing to be in a company where diversity and inclusiveness are more than just lip service. There are formal corporate guidelines and directions around how to be inclusive and how to deal with all the different various situations for people who might be on the outer end of the bell curves as far as handicap, ability, gender identity, and so on and so forth. So that brings us to present day, and here I am, and I hope to share some of my experience and thoughts with everybody.
Absolutely, Anna. That is such a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing so much with us and being so open. I actually want to go back in time a little bit and then sort of like come, sort of walk through your different stages with you. You mentioned coming out as a transgender woman in your 50s. Can you tell us, while I believe you've described your transition as a fairy tale, but you recognize that this isn't the same experience for everyone, how has that influenced you currently, say, in your activism?
It, I think in a way, I feel that I have so many privileges during my transition and now that is incumbent upon me to take advantage of those privileges and make and actively move to improve the well-being and welfare of people like me. I can afford to be out there and outspoken and visible, and in a way, I think that does two things. I think visibility brings awareness that people, and that would normalize the transgender demographic. That here we are people, we have jobs, we have family, we have challenges just like everybody else, we have loves and hates just like everybody else. So by being visible, I think that advance the ball as well, and also being able to be out there and be visible, take risks, do things without much worry about consequences. Being in such a point in my life, I felt that it's incumbent on me to do more, to be an activist, to be loud and outspoken and visible and show up everywhere. Now, in a way, I think some people might look at it as if, well, this woman has a bit of a savior complex. And it may be, so there might be some of that too. But however it's regarded, I think that the net is that it does a lot of good. So being transgender, being a minority, and being a bit of an oddity as far as being a woman in technology, I feel that all those things kind of give me an advantage in my activism.
Thank you. Absolutely. And speaking of visibility, during your journey, what was that moment of visibility and acknowledgement from those close to you that you value the most?
Yeah, so when I first came out, obviously the question of how I will be received is a huge one. Every transgender person coming out has asked that question, has obsessed over that question, and the value of being acknowledged and accepted for a transgender person cannot be overstated. The proper use of pronouns, respecting a trans person's new name is more than than most things that one can do to support the trans community. And I remember one of those occasions really stuck out in my mind, and I will never forget this. And that is the first time that my dad called me Anna. And it was such a kind of a mundane, casual situation. We were just sitting around talking, blah, 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 blah. And then my dad said, Anna, da, 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 da. And it was like, it's just something, it's barely a ripple in the stream of the conversation. But that came at me like a tidal wave. And it was just such an amazing moment. I will never forget it.
That's beautiful. Sometimes the smallest moments have the biggest impacts, don't they? Yes. And sort of going from there, I'm sure there are a lot of people here. You've sort of like transformed yourself, so many times over. You've lived so many lives. What advice would you have for somebody that's, looking to, say, pivot their career or take a career break? How should they go about it?
Yeah, I guess my career has taken a few zig and zags. Somebody in one of the sessions yesterday, Jimena Amenderes, I think, they said that career path is often not linear, and I guess mine's like that. I would say that one of the way to prepare oneself for a industry that one is moving into or moving back into is to keep oneself informed about that industry. Like, for example, in my case, even though I was 100% full-time in the fashion industry, I maintain all my membership and contacts in the tech world. And in fact, I came to hear about the IBM Tech Reentry opportunity from a Women in Tech meetup.com group. So by staying in touch, keep one's fingers on the pulse of the industry that one is going to or returning to, I think that will give one an advantage as far as information, as well as and knowledge and being up to date as to what that industry is all about.
Absolutely. And do you have, I'm sure that as you mentioned, nobody's life is easy, not yours, not anybody's. I mean, everything looks so amazing right now, but is there something that you have, like, what do you tell yourself when you're down or when you're wondering what the next door that's going to open is going to be?
This is not new, and it might be a bit cliche, but when I'm really feeling a bit depressed or overwhelmed, I imagine how it could be a lot worse, and it can always be a lot worse. I know that sounds glib and chive, but it can. I mean, for example, even if everything else is the same, imagine what life would be like if I was blind, or if I was confined to a wheelchair. How much worse that would be. So it's easy to imagine how much worse one's situation could be, and that kind of that always gives me the energy and the uplift that I need to face the situation that I'm in.
Absolutely. Counting your blessings. would be
Absolutely.
would be like a positive way of looking at the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I definitely know what you're saying. So thank you so much, Anna. It's just been really wonderful chatting with you. I believe, thank you for your time today. And I'm just going to join Powerfly and our audience here to say we've learned a lot and really just appreciate your transparency and openness.
It has been my pleasure. It's so fun to be here. It's always a great opportunity for me to share my personal life, my journey, some of my thoughts, and maybe a little bit of advice around the around career and how to support the transgender community. So thank you.
Thank you both, ladies. This was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed your conversation.